Plant people, do you know where plants come from? I know that sounds like kind of a silly question, but I suspect most of you don't. And as someone who's worked within the industry for a long time, I just thought I would kind of go off script and give a little insight into how all of this works. And I'm actually kind of uniquely positioned to do that because I'm a small business owner who engages basically across the entire plant industry in a way that most other nurseries or vendors don't. So let's get into it. When you buy something like a pothos or a carnivorous plant like we produce, I mostly am talking about indoor tropicals here because that's what I have the most experience with and what seems to be at least the little section of TikTok that I live in. How are these plants coming available in Europe, in the United States, in different regions across these pretty large areas simultaneously? How is that being coordinated? Are we shipping large numbers of live plants around in semi-trucks or what? Like, how does that work? And the answer is actually super interesting, at least to somebody like me. There's several different parts of the industry, and like I said, I actually operate across almost all of them. So let's go through it really quickly. There's breeders. There are these breeders who produce the genetic material that will eventually become the plants that make it into the marketplace. I do this. I produce my own lines of various kinds of plants by breeding and producing seed from those plants, testing them, doing generational breeding, that sort of thing. So that's an entire industry. I work in a little tiny niche, producing a little tiny section of plants that no one really cares about. But anyway, you make this genetic material, and that's square one. Square two is a relatively recent addition to the world of horticulture that is what is currently causing it to explode. And that is in vitro production. That is producing plants in sterile laboratories, which allows you to multiply them infinitely. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. This is what's called a flask or a tub of plants. These are plants that were sown in this clear stuff in the bottom here is agar. It's a seaweed-based matrix that is filled with nutrients and hormones and vitamins and all that stuff. And there is nothing else in here genetically other than exactly this plant that I produced from seed. They are sterile. That's why it's called a sterile culture. And these cultures, because they are in this extremely manipulated environment, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with them just because of the way plants work. You can shave a little piece off of any of these plants, and as long as you remain sterile, you can multiply that into as many new plants as you want, given a little bit of time. Actually, you can see like the roots here. Here's the tops. These are Cape sundews that I've had produced in a lab from my breeding material. You can ship these all over the planet, and that is how modern tropical horticulture is working right now. You're not shipping live plants. You're not taking cuttings predominantly. You're making them in these sterile cultures. You take that culture, you do what's called deflasking. You get it out of the culture. It's kind of a dicey period for the plant because it's being exposed to pathogens and air for the first time ever in its life. And then you make young plants. These are called young plants. You take them, you harden them off in a greenhouse, and you can make as many of these as you want. This is how we produce them in 72 cell trays. And these are what become our sales stock. You grow them for a period of time, or if you are what's called a young plant nursery, which is a niche within the horticulture industry, you just make these trays and you ship these trays to finishing nurseries. That's where the regional aspect starts kicking in, because once you get the cultures, these flasks, you put them into a tray. That tray is now like a normal plant. It's fragile. It's regulated in where you can ship it, because you might be trying to ship into a quarantine area or out of a quarantine area into another nation, whatever. It gets much harder once they are out of that sterile flask. So young plant nurseries are kind of hubs around a region that allows finishing nurseries to buy the trays and then grow them in their greenhouse to some kind of specification. If you take one of these plants right here and you put it into a 3.5-inch pot and you grow it for some amount of time, you get a finished plant. And this is what we here at Predatory Plants sell to local distributors, and then local businesses are able to then buy these. So this is the finished product. So in that little chain of command there that I highlighted, you have breeders who make genetic material. We do that. You have laboratories that take that genetic material and multiply it as much as they want and produce flasks. The flasks get shipped around the world to young plant nurseries. Young plant nurseries take those flasks and produce trays of young plants that are hardened off and ready to exist in the real environment. Young plant nurseries ship those trays to finishing nurseries. Finishing nurseries make finished plants. They either sell direct to consumer, they wholesale them to, Home Depot, Trader Joe's, whatever, or they have, local businesses that buy from them. And we do kind of all of those as well on our side. I could show you examples of this for all of our other lines of plants as well. Tropical pitcher plants, sundews, butterworts, but this could be philodendron, pothos, alocasia, colocasia, monstera. They all go through the same process. And if you're in the industry, you can just buy flasks from either domestic producers or overseas. China, Thailand, Indonesia, India all have nice big production facilities where you can buy these kind of things. Quite a bit in Europe. And then they enter the market as finished plants from that final link in the chain. So maybe that clears things up. Maybe you're not interested. But when you do buy these things, you should understand that there's a whole process that leads to that. Home Depot does not grow your plants, right? Trader Joe's doesn't touch them. They come in on a truck, they put them on the floor, and they sell them. There's a whole bunch of other nurseries, small businesses, medium businesses, large agribusinesses that contributed to that monstera that you just bought. And so I hope that's interesting. If it is, ask some questions. I can make more content like this. This is kind of off the cuff as I was looking at a recent shipment of flash that we had come in, thinking like, do people know how this works, or is that just totally industry mumbo jumbo? But yeah, let me know if you have any questions about how this works, who we are, or how we're involved in all of this. And yeah, that's it.